She was only 15 when a stranger pulled into her quiet South Carolina neighborhood and changed everything. Kara Robinson was watering plants in her friend's yard when the man approached, pretending to hand her pamphlets. Within minutes, she was forced into a large plastic bin in the back of his car. It was broad daylight, the kind of moment that shatters the illusion of safety. Kara had always been the kind of teenager who carried a small silver necklace her grandmother gave her, a delicate chain she rarely took off. That necklace, ordinary and unremarkable, became a detail her family clung to when she vanished. Parents in the community left porch lights burning through the night, as if light itself could ward off the darkness that had taken her. Neighbors whispered on sidewalks. Children were walked to school under watchful eyes. And even the sound of a car slowing near a driveway made hearts pound. The kidnapping was immediate, violent, and terrifying. But what followed was a story of resilience that no one could have predicted. Inside the car, Kara kept her mind focused. She noticed details others might have missed. The man's cigarettes, the make of his car, the way he spoke. He drove her to his apartment, where he bound her and tried to erase her sense of control. But Kara, even at 15, understood that survival meant observing everything. She memorized the layout of the rooms, the objects on the shelves, the numbers on the refrigerator. She counted minutes by the sound of traffic outside, teaching herself that information could be her weapon. Investigators later explained that every clue she retained would become a thread in unraveling the mystery. Her parents, meanwhile, sat in their living room staring at her empty chair, her backpack still leaning against the wall. Local churches held vigils. Newspapers ran headlines that made the crime sound like a nightmare pulled from fiction. But to Kara's family, it was raw reality. The media coverage was relentless, with television anchors repeating her name until it became a symbol of both fear and hope. Forensics in 2002 still leaned heavily on fingerprints, dental records, and blood typing. DNA was becoming more common, but it was not yet the quick, sweeping tool it would later become. Detectives canvassed neighborhoods, knocking on doors, asking about unfamiliar vehicles, and searching for anyone who might have seen a girl forced into a car. They collected cigarette butts, fibers, and fingerprints from public areas, knowing that each piece of evidence could be compared against databases that were still incomplete. Families in the community followed the updates with a mix of dread and faith, listening to radio bulletins and scanning newspaper reports for any sign of progress. Parents tightened curfews. Teenagers stopped walking alone. The fear was so tangible that even grocery store aisles felt different, with mothers keeping their daughters close at hand. Kara, during her captivity, never stopped thinking about escape. She tested the restraints, studied the locks, and waited for the moment when the man's guard would lower. Her courage was not loud. It was quiet, deliberate, and unbroken. When the chance came, she took it. The man had fallen asleep, and Kara slipped free, using every ounce of the knowledge she had gathered. She ran barefoot into the sunlight, clutching details in her memory that would soon guide investigators straight to him. Police responded quickly, moving with urgency as she recounted addresses, descriptions, and objects she had seen. Raids were organized. Interrogations followed. Evidence was collected from the apartment she had escaped, and the fingerprints and personal items inside confirmed his identity. Forensic teams carefully bagged and labeled each piece, photographing every corner of the scene, knowing that the chain of custody could make or break the case in court. Kara's escape was not just survival, it was testimony. Her recollections became evidence as strong as any fingerprint. Communities that had been paralyzed with fear began to breathe again, though they did so cautiously. Porch lights still burned. Parents still walked children to school. But now there was a sense that courage could fight back against terror. The case left a lasting mark. Law enforcement agencies studied how Kara had remembered so many details under pressure, and her story began to be used in training sessions for officers and victim advocates. Media outlets reflected on their role, some admitting that the saturation coverage had both fueled fear and kept the case in public attention. Families across the country heard her story and began teaching their children small survival techniques: how to memorize license plates, how to notice surroundings, how to trust instincts. Forensic science continued to advance in the years that followed, with DNA databases expanding and investigative methods becoming faster and more precise. But what lingered most was the human side: a teenager with a silver necklace, a family that refused to give up hope, and a community that learned how fragile safety could feel. Even after the man was gone from the streets, the habits remained. Porch lights left on, doors double-checked, neighbors watching out for one another. The memory of what had happened to Kara never fully faded.